Karen Martin. I'm VP of Programming for CMA, and I want to welcome you to this month's CMA Connect. Just as a quick reminder, as we always do, we want to remind you that CMA is run entirely by volunteers, and we're always looking for members to get more involved and take on some leadership and support roles. So if you're interested, please reach out to your local chapter or to Global. CMA offers many membership benefits and perks, including our job board, video library, member discounts. So check us out on social media and also check out our mentorship program and other events. We also have a member directory. It's a great way of connecting with our members. So if you would like to fill out your profile a little more completely, we're going to put that link into the chat. And we're pretty much ready to get started.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, I definitely want to point you to that member directory. It's the way you can get in contact with everybody you meet tonight and at other connects. So I'm excited to have you all here. And let's welcome our guest speaker, Ben J. Miller. Hi, Ben.
Hello,
Ben,
hey, hello.
Ben is a senior learning designer at LeapFrog Enterprises, Inc., where he infuses education and technology into the design of educational tools, books, and games. Ben earned his doctorate in educational psychology and learning sciences from the University of Iowa. At the University of Iowa Children's Hospital, he researched how kids and adults use digital devices for coping and distraction during painful medical procedures. He enjoys extracting insights from educational research and finding practical applications for them in daily life and learning. His products have received numerous parenting and toy awards and STEAM accreditation from the Toy Association. In addition to designing educational products, he has expertise in digital media, games for learning, and cooperative engagement. He is fascinated by gadgets and embraces innovative technology to create meaningful experiences. Ben currently resides in Santa Rosa, California, with his spouse, Julie, and their two doodle mix dogs, Jasper and Cooper. Are they going to make an appearance tonight?
No,
Jasper and Cooper?
They're all tucked away right now.
When he isn't working, Ben is probably playing with toys, playing a game, playing around disc golf. He also enjoys word puzzles, pondering over hypotheticals, and playing devil's advocate. Whether at work or at play, his motto is to be furiously curious. Welcome, Ben. That's Ben. And if you have a question as the conversation goes on, please feel free to write it in the chat. We're going to open up the floor to a Q&A after Ben and I are done. So let's get started. So Ben, you're a learning scientist. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that means?
Yeah, the learning sciences is really a field of study about trying to take the theoretical frameworks and the understandings that come out of educational research and apply those in realistic settings. And some of that research does take place in realistic settings like schools, museums, informal learning environments. And so as a learning scientist, really my goal is just trying to be able to take all those great nuggets that all the researchers out there are finding and apply those to real world situations and get those into kids and parents and everybody's hands, and so that they can really apply them and learn more on their own.
Amazing. You have some toys to show us, your own products. So I was wondering if you could think of a way that you use learning research practically in that toy and show us an example.
Yeah. So a lot of where our work at LeapFrog kind of starts is it's grounded in a lot of research, whether that's educational research, stuff coming out of it, psych or computer and technology, human interfacing, or even just product research as well. And so a lot of what we try to do then is trying to take one of those things, like maybe it's problem-based learning or something like that, and integrating that into a product design. So one of the products that I work on, our parent company is VTech. And so LeapFrog VTech, we're under the same house. And so VTech has a product called Marble Rush. And it's kind of a traditional kind of style of the marble runs where you build up a big tower, run the marbles down, they go through loops, they go over jumps, down funnels, or they, crisscross and gaps and things like that. And so what we've tried to do with not only putting that, really fun kind of engineering based toy out there, we've also tried to pair it with some supplemental activities that provide kids the opportunity to kind of do scientific experiments on their own at home using that product or using the Marble Rush as kind of a base for that. So some of the things that they might try to do are like trying to understand concepts of physics, like things like friction and slope and gravity. And what we do is we ask them to kind of then manipulate the marbles that they have to figure out kind of where those nuances in those concepts are. So one of the things like with a marble, it's smooth, it's round, it rolls, but asking them then what happens if you create something like a marble out of tin foil and you crush it up and try to create a nice sphere like that. What happens when it runs down the marble run? Does it go as fast? Does it go as far? Those sorts of things. We might also ask them to kind of manipulate the tracks themselves by putting like adding friction to the tracks, by putting like masking tape down and trying to get them to think about what the impact of that might be, kind of asking their own questions and designing it in their own ways, and then conducting investigations, collecting data, and going back to those hypotheses and saying, oh, was I right? Was I wrong? Why did this happen? You know, kind of creating those kind of moments and then those aha moments out of that as well.
That is so cool. So you're not just designing just a toy, what we might think of it. You're not just designing a toy locomotive, a toy train. It's like building on already existing toys or thinking of ways that a child might engage with the product in more interesting ways. I love that. Yeah. So you are obviously very passionate about play. I was really wanting to ask you, growing up, what were sort of the things that really sparked this interest in you in looking at how just a toy you were passionate about, or the first time you really thought about how does this product work? How does this toy work?
Funny enough, marble runs were a big thing.
Okay.
As a kid, I've liked playing with Kinects and Legos as well, but Kinects never really actually connected as much with me. Legos were cool because you could always, we just had a big bucket of them and you just tip that bucket over and start designing and creating from that. So I always loved that as a kid. I also like playing outside too, and not just with toys inside, but sometimes we take some of our older toys out to the sandbox. And we had this activity that we called flooding the sandbox. And what we would do is we get in the sandbox, we'd create these big mounds and like we call them like pyramids, but they weren't quite that pyramid shape. They're more cone-like, and little troughs and things around it. And we take the hose, bring it out to the sandbox, shove it into the middle of the pyramid, and just kind of watch the water volcano erupt and go down all these little runs that we'd create, and then kind of learn about like erosion and like how these all impacted by the water running down it. And we'd have little characters, GI Joes and stuff out there trying to like see who would survive, as we say. And then the next day it'd all dry up, and then we'd be back at it again and digging out those holes again and finding the lost soldiers along the way.
I love that. It's so cool to see how kids play and how they can come up with creative games. Like you would never think in a sandbox you make sandcastles. You wouldn't think to necessarily learn about erosion through sandcastles. So I think a lot of parents and educators might feel that maybe something like a tablet or something like a video game, they're just sitting there and they're not engaged. So what are ways that you can create an open-ended design that engages kids to play creatively?
Yeah, it's always a challenge to be able to do that because, in some cases you have a lot of computing power. Desktop computers, tablets, iPads are all very great. One of the challenges that we have is always trying to make those have enough memory or RAM and things like that people can afford too, right? A lot of our products are more focused on what you might buy at Target or at Walmart or on Amazon that's not a few $100s at a time. But the way you can still do that with those are just some of the constraints you get to work within. And we can still do tablets at a cheaper price and be able to have those multi-touch interactions. But I think the things that are really important for that are like making sure that you're keeping kids engaged, that they have, and to do that, they have to have autonomy. They have to be able to kind of decide what they want to do with things. So you have to provide a lot of interactivity, a lot of freedom of choice, and be very thoughtful in gamifying some of those experiences. Because just by adding, you know, a score to something doesn't necessarily make it a game. Like, you know, you can, how many times you tap something doesn't necessarily make it a game. I think when you're trying to teach something, if it's an educational game, I think the learning mechanics and the game mechanics really have to have a nice meld together, where by the process of things you're doing in the game are actually have parallels to the way that you learn things in real life. And so being able to kind of balance all those things, the costs, the autonomy, the motivation that keeps them engaged, but also surprising them, but allowing them to kind of steer their own direction, I think is all really important.
Yeah. Could you talk about that word gamify more? Because I feel like I hear it and I get a sense of what it is, but what does it mean to you?
To me, gamifying, anything can be gamified, I think. I think that gamifying, gamification is kind of a step below, a tier below what an actual game is. And I think by gamifying something, you're introducing game-like elements into an activity. So that might be, like I said, score. It could be like a timer. It could be some sort of competition between two people. But I think that in order for it to really be a game, there needs to be a sense of playfulness to it too. So that people have that fun, that joy factor, and not just saying, you know, what I remember from third grade is how many of these 100 simple math addition problems can you get done in 60 seconds? And like, you could say, hey, you got 99, that's your score. That's gamifying it a little bit. By calling it a score, but it's not really a game.
Okay, interesting. Another question I had for you, you're talking a lot about learning through play. At LeapFrog, is there a difference between toys designed for the home and toys designed for the classroom? Do you design toys or games specifically for the classroom?
Part of our history is designing products that were used in the classroom. We've gone a little bit further away from that, and since I've been there for the last almost 4 years now. And we have things that are really good supplemental tools for the classroom. Let's see, what do I have on my
show and tell.
Okay, so like in a preschool, Mr. Pencil's Scribble and Write might be really good. This teaches handwriting. They follow along how to do stroke order and things like that. So that's something that you might find in like a preschool or a kindergarten classroom that could be provided to a child to supplement some of the things that they're doing as a class together. At a little bit older age range, this is one that we made last year, or that's just coming out this year, is this Microscope. So it's what is really cool about this Microscope is that it has these kind of like preloaded slides that there's nothing, I mean, it's not a sample in itself, but what it does is it reads that, and then it provides content that's partnered with the BBC about like things on that. So this one's all about flying insects and crawlers, but then we also have like human body and human cells, and that's really great. It has that curated content for them. But what is awesome, and I just dropped, let's see, is it also is a functioning microscope. So it's not just a preloaded content. It's not just a digital media viewer. It actually can zoom in on things. And what I have here, I'll see if I can turn this on, is this is a little slide that I made. I found this little bee in my backyard that was just on the ground, and kind of was curious about it because, you know, you hear about the bee population and what's happening with them as it gets fired up here. And so I was kind of curious to see, you know, wondering why that's going on. Why is that bee just, you know, was down there? And so what I did is I just scooped it up and created a slide out of it. And what's really awesome about it, if I can get good focus, try to turn down the volume so you don't have to hear all the narration. But what we can see is like the pollen that is actually on the hairs of the bee. And so you can zoom in and out and get focus with it. And so again, this is something that isn't necessarily designed for the classroom, but you could imagine it being in a classroom, you know, and it's for kids kind of like 5 and up. So, it could be in any of those kindergarten to fourth grade kind of classrooms, or at home for kids, and they can kind of experiment, ask their own questions, make their own slides, kind of lead their own experience that way. And I think it's okay for them, and I love it actually, when they can just say, why is this, or what is that, and not necessarily have the answer all in it. They have some guidance for some curated content, but then they can start asking those questions, reach out to their parents, go on the internet, start looking for those things and figuring out what the answers to those questions.
That toy is so cool. Yeah, I love that you have this, like you said, you have the guided, but also you can, once you're done with that, you can go crazy with it. Can you tell me about the inception of that microscope and sort of walk me through to where it is today?
Yeah, so with the microscope, it's part of our Magic Adventures line of products. So we have other things like a globe out there. That the idea of the Magic Adventures line is kind of taking these adult-like tools or resources like a globe, but bringing them into a level that kids can kind of interact with them and then be able to manipulate and understand in their own way. And so with the microscope, one of the big challenges with it is that, a traditional microscope, you have 2 little lenses that you have to look through. We've all been there where you're kind of trying to get it to the right distance apart and trying to focus on things and changing the magnification. And so what we've done is we've kind of taken that challenge out of it and just put it into a screen so that kids can just see it that way and not have that kind of barrier to entry. It also makes it so that multiple kids or child and parent can look at the same content together. And so that makes it more of a group experience, and being able to co-view. We know that there's a lot of affordances with that where parents can help scaffold information, or even an older brother or sister can as well. Or vice versa. The child who may be interacting with it may be the older one, the 5-year-old, and showing their 3-year-old the cool bee that's underneath it. So when that product originally started, that was one that we kind of have different production concepting cycles, where we may come up with just kind of blue sky, whatever you'd like, try to think of something, and let's see if it sticks to the wall and we can make a product out of it. And then on the other side, there's things like our Magic Adventures line, where we're like, oh, we want to have a globe. Okay, what's next in that? Well, maybe a microscope. And then we're even now thinking more, how does that line continue? What other kind of experiences can we create with that? So with the microscope, it was already they wanted to make a microscope, but there was a lot of our involvement, the learning team. I'm a team of learning designers at LeapFrog. There's 5 of us that and a vice president of learning that we report to, and we kind of all work together and get assigned different projects, but we help to kind of provide feedback on not only like, oh, hey, they have a microscope, but they also will want to know, well, what size, what angle should the screen be at? Kind of what developmental level are kids able to kind of look at that? Or also, what are they able to manipulate with it too? And kind of making sure that the whole experience, from the size of the product to how they engage with it, the inputs, all of that, our learning team has the input and to provide on that. So we kind of all shape it together, and it just it evolves.
You've been mentioning interactivity a lot. That seems to be at the basis of what a lot of what your research is. Could you tell me a little bit about the benefits of interactivity? Like, say I have just a plain old globe versus I have a globe that will say Kazakhstan when I touch Kazakhstan.
I think a lot of it is that you kind of that feedback, you get that interactivity, and that provides kind of real-time feedback about what you're doing. Like when you touch a country and you want to make sure, which country am I touching? Getting that, to know that. A lot of times those countries on globes are really small and hard to see, which is a challenge we faced with our own as well. But then you can also go beyond just that. You then get some understanding about the culture of Kazakhstan, and maybe what are the primary crops, and seeing some videos of what life is like there. And then not only that, that's kind of like the introduction of where you get to learn about it. That's kind of our introductory aspect to it. But then beyond that, you can then develop interactive activities with it. So you can kind of play a Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego kind of style game. For those who remember that, I think it's coming back as well. And being able to kind of follow, maybe have clues about like where you might want to go next, or planning a trip and kind of where you go different places. So I think a lot of that interactivity helps to just helps kids to engage with that information of what they've learned or what they've been presented with, and manipulate it in new ways so that transfer of knowledge starts to occur.
Great. I'm going to open it to the floor in a little bit, but I wanted to ask you quickly if there was another toy you brought that you wanted to demonstrate for us.
Oh man, of course, I've got more toys.
You have toys everywhere.
Yeah, I do. I mean, this one is really cool. One of the things we get to do with LeapFrog, you'll see there's one up there as well. I don't know, I have two, but at LeapFrog, sometimes we get to work with licensors as well. So this is Storytime Blue, and Blue comes with 3 books. And so we got to work with Nickelodeon and with the Josh, the latest and greatest Josh, to do voice recording with it. But we kind of rethought these 3 classic fairy tales, the Goldilocks and 3 Little Pigs, and one other, the Big Bad Wolf, that we got to reimagine those stories kind of from Blue's perspective. And the challenge with that, which was kind of cool, is Blue never speaks in the show. Blue has vocalizations. You can kind of know what she's thinking based on those vocalizations, but she doesn't actually verbalize things. So that was one of the challenges with this, is how do you get a talking toy that can read books aloud to kids, but that doesn't speak? And so what we did with that is we've got our handy dandy notebook. We've got Josh right here, and Josh's little face lights up as he's reading the story, and Blue provides little vocalizations along the way. Now we have that's not exactly, the most groundbreaking experience of having a plush read a story to a child. But what I really love about this is Blue's paw print here on every page in the book, or in every book, there's 3 clues throughout the books themselves where Blue's paw print are on different pages. And there's an underlying game throughout it where the child is trying to figure out what Blue wants to read next. So as Josh is reading the story and a child sees a clue on the page, they can squeeze Blue's paw here and they'll recognize that. They'll say, "Oh, you found a clue." And it's a brick. Wonder what story Blue might want to read next that has a brick. And so you go along throughout that and then try to guess at the end what story she wants to read next. And there's 3 little story buttons here that will both read the stories, but then also act as inputs then for guessing what the child, or what Blue wants to read next. So there's more of that interactivity that's not just a passive experience. So it keeps kids engaged. And even if they're not able to read, they're looking at the pages, they're following along. So it's building those early reading habits.
That is amazing. That toy is like the perfect encapsulation of the show itself. It's like having the show itself in doll form. That's amazing. So I'm going to open it up to the rest of the group. Karen has a question, and she's asking, are there specific designs that always work for kids, and what designs are problematic for kids to learn from?
That's a great question. Thank you for asking that, Karen. I think that there are typical play patterns that kids have. There's, construction play patterns, like I was describing with building Legos and, playing in the sandbox. There's other things like pretend play, where kids are, developing a narrative, maybe by themselves, maybe with a peer, maybe they're doing that side by side, or maybe they're doing it cooperatively. So those types of patterns are really prominent, and they work really well. They're kind of tried and true, and that's why we see a lot of those products there. I don't know that there are any that are problematic in general. I think just maybe passive experiences, ones that are, they do have some benefit. There are studies that show viewing digital media does have benefits for kids, but a lot of those benefits sometimes come from interaction with their parents, talking about that content, extending that what that content and the experiences into their own lives. How would you react in this situation? Do you think that was a good idea? Those sorts of things can be really beneficial, but I think if there's a spectrum from like passive to active engagement, I think things that are most problematic are those that kind of sit towards the passive end. But that doesn't mean that those can't be enhanced to provide a beneficial experience.
I'm going to go back to the chat questions, but you brought up something that I was thinking about, is that you mentioned parent scaffolding or parent co-viewing. Could you talk a little bit more about what are the benefits of that and how you design to encourage that?
The benefits of that, I mean, there's a lot, but the things that kind of stick out to me, or the most obvious or most prominent, are that it's that if anybody's a psychology major, they've heard of Vygotsky and the zone of proximal development. And so if you haven't, look up ZPD, zone of proximal development. It's kind of that range of what you're able to do on your own, but then what you can do with just a little bit more support. And so that is like what parents are able to do. They're able to help their child, not just, stay at this pace and learn things on their own, but then help kind of give them these little step ups by helping them to connect things to maybe other concepts that they might not have made those connections between, connections of what they're seeing on screen, or a connection between, a marble rolling down a hill and rolling down the slopes, and the ball and the basketball on the court, kind of, why is that stay still? Why is that not rolling around? So they kind of help to be able to provide that and help kids kind of understand more. And so that's one of the really great benefits of scaffolding, which comes along with co-viewing as well. We also, in our products, the way that we kind of design for that is we don't shy away from using scientific terms. Like in this, like we have a lot of scientific terms. I think we have a trichogama wasp in here. So it's like, and we have things like, talking about proteins in the blood cells and stuff. And those aren't maybe terms that kids are familiar with, or maybe with protein, they're thinking of it in a different way, of maybe protein that they eat, although it's all, the same kind of things in the body, but helping them to kind of understand that and kind of like help them to reach up and learn more than maybe just staying at what's obvious and on the ground level.
Thank you. Tiffany asked, what future trends do you see in toys?
Before I'd be remiss about forgetting about it, a CMA member who I cited a lot in my research as a undergraduate or as a graduate student in my doctoral research, Lori Takuchi, has joint media engagement, is an amazing concept that she has researched a lot, and you can also look that up, and talks a lot about co-viewing, and
Oh, great.
the step up above that is joint media engagement, not just viewing together, but being interactive to it. So I had to
Awesome.
mention that. Future trends in toys. We were just talking about this at LeapFrog, and kind of our team was presenting on this, and just future trends. It's tough to say. There's lots of conversations about metaverse and, Meta trying to really push for the virtual reality experiences. And I think that those aren't quite grasping, people aren't quite grasping those, or quite drawn to those. And I think part of that might be because it's more of a solitary kind of experience, even though you can be in a metaverse with other people interacting. But in the physical space that you're in, sometimes it's a little bit more solitary. But I do think things like AR, augmented reality, those sorts of things are going to be a lot more prevalent in toys, whether it's a way that you use your phone to kind of supplement the experience of, I think Lego does a really good job with this. I think in building some of their sets, they provide AR experiences where you can kind of see how the set would build up, and see that in the physical space. I see things being more personalized as well, as chips and memory, these computer chips get cheaper and cheaper as long as the supply chain holds up. That being able to do more things with storing, the name of a child, or being able to store like a child profile locally. Data protection is always at the foremost of our thoughts, and our designs, but being able to use that to kind of make it feel more of a personalized experience when you get a product, and being able to personalize those toys as well. whether it's designing them, adding your own stickers, not just getting what's out of the box and doing that. And I think that's been around for a while. I know I gifted my little sister one of those Color Me bears that you could throw into the wash and then redo it again and again. But I think those kind of things are really powerful. And I think that being able to make your mark as a child on something is really powerful.
I had one of those color bears. Its name was Drew, which is a great pun.
Oh, that's wordplay. That's great.
Elizabeth has a big question. Can you tell us about the design process of a product from start to finish? Do you usually start the process with a learning goal? Or if you don't, what inspires that process?
Thank you for asking that, Elizabeth. So there's I'll kind of just run through, because I could talk about this for a whole hour on kind of this thing, but there's multiple stages of kind of our product design. And so just to list those stages out and I may be glossing over some, but it's like we do product research, we do educational research kind of at the same time, looking at the pedagogy, figuring out what is a really cool way that people are learning something new. There's a lot of stuff coming out about my colleague, Carolyn James. She does a lot of great work on structured literacy and how word walls are not being as common. And the new push is kind of to teaching individual phonemes and things like that. And she'd be much better about explaining all of it, but taking a concept like that and saying, how are we going to integrate that into a new product? How are we going to take this insight from educational research about a better way maybe to teach language development and then bring it into a product experience that can be successful when the child is alone or when the child is with somebody else. We always have to kind of consider for the lowest common denominator that it might just be the child playing with it in a solitary place, and there might not be somebody more knowledgeable around to help explain things. So we start with that product research, then we kind of start thinking about the product design, generating and refining concept ideas, and we move on to then kind of the learning design. So identifying what kind of curricular areas, what are the learning goals that we want for this product? And a lot of times that's a very kind of wide idea or listing of kind of things that we want to do. Well, it could do this, it could do that, it could do this, we could do all of that. It'd be great. And then we get kind of the product design comes back and say, well, at this price point, this is the chip that you're going to get. It has 4 megabytes, and go with that. And I'm not joking when I say 4 megabytes, less than a song, like an MP3 that you would have in that. So that kind of then takes that wide variety of content and be able to, okay, what do we want to focus on? What is the design of this product? What affordances does it have? And what interactions will it support? We'll also then, after that, kind of thinking about the designs and what supports are needed and what the catalyst for learning is. We'll think about the game logic design, and not all of our products have games in them or gaming like activities, but we do have a team of game designers that are really great at LeapFrog. So we work with them to then kind of think about, okay, here are learning goals, and how do we want to be able to build this into a game so the game mechanics and the learning mechanics are together as one. And so we're doing that, working together. As we're kind of storyboarding that sort of thing out, we do that for a lot of our digital products, our TV connected products and things. Our goal is always to provide a playful experience that it sustains interactions that help kids to achieve, to engage with more content and to apply their understandings of that content. Once we kind of have that whole brainstorming kind of worked out, we'll then work on the writing and the specific scripting of it. And again, this is where we get constrained by the memory sizes of the products that we have, whether it's a 4 megabyte chip in something like Blue and how much Blue can say, or if it's like a video game that kind of has a lot more opportunity for it, or like the Microscope where there's a lot more memory built into it. And we'll work with our producers on that and our game designers and kind of write out what we want in it, start thinking about how, when this interaction happens, what plays. And then if they are asked a question and they answer it this way with a wrong answer, then what's the feedback we're going to provide for it? And sometimes it's like, oh, it could be any one of these wrong answers. So we have different types of feedback we might want to provide to help kind of identify what area it was that they were being challenged with, and making sure we give that the proper remediation or the proper instruction for saying, oh yeah, do you remember about this? Like, and to get them to apply that concept. After we've written and kind of scripted that, it goes through a lot of iterations throughout this process. It's a very iterative process this whole time. We're working on the kind of the design, physical design of the product, the learning design, and the scripting all kind of are going at the same time. They're kind of churning, things get tweaked and added or taken away throughout that. But once we get to a place where we kind of have our first alpha build for it, we'll start doing usability testing. So we really start then testing, do those learning interactions? Are the kids, do those work? Are the kids getting to that point where they're gonna maybe engage with this content and start applying that? Are they finding that easily? Are we making sure that they get to the right part, or are they getting stuck somewhere? And if they're getting stuck somewhere, is it because they're intending to get stuck there? Like, did they just find something really cool that they're just like, hey, I'm going to keep engaging with that? Or is it that they faced a barrier and that, you know, they're maybe confused about how to get there? And so we'll tackle that in a couple different ways, but really just trying to refine the execution of the learning and game design principles. And as we're doing that, we kind of have these new builds that come out. So these new versions of the product that we'll be testing. Internally, we'll be testing with ourselves, but then we'll also be testing with children who will come into our play testing lab, and we'll do observations, kind of have research questions going into those. And we'll refine that. And then also throughout that too, kind of in those later stages, start working with our marketing teams and trying to also then understand what the learning design is, and how do we communicate that on box, on shelf? How do we both show that it's really appealing and going to be fun, but also that it's, you know, going to be educational and that they're going to learn something from it, and trying to balance all those needs between us and marketing, and, you know, with the audience who's the parent, and what is it, the child who's going to engage with it, really making sure there's a really good first kind of product experience when they walk up to it on the shelf, or by developing, you know, videos and images and stuff that explain the same kind of things, because we know a lot of shopping occurs online as well. And a lot of times people want to see a video of something going and how it works, rather than maybe going to Target and seeing how it works on shelf. So that's it. And at that point, we're kind of still just kind of refining stuff, but the whole development process takes usually about 18 to 24 months from initial concept to then being on shelf itself. So right now we're kind of starting to close out on things that will be hitting the shelves maybe in fall of 2023, but that we've been working on since the beginning of this year. And even some of those concepts have been concepts for longer than that. Sometimes things don't stick right away, or maybe the technology isn't quite there for the price point. So those concepts sometimes just kind of resurface and develop in different iterations.
How many toys do you work on at a time?
It depends on the product and the density of the toy. Something like the telescope or the microscope here is like it's got a lot of content in it. It's got a larger memory size chip, but there's this little toaster over here that has like 1 megabyte chip that is much smaller. And so it only has about like 100 lines of audio or something in it. So it kind of depends, but I would say between probably maybe like 4 and 8 kind of products at a time. And they're in different stages as well during that. So they're not all at kind of the kid testing stage or the concepting stage. And we also work on other educational like resources as well. Like I said, for the Marble Rush things, that we didn't develop the Marble Rush. It wasn't involved in the initial product design, but we were asked then to kind of come on board to do some of the supplemental, make sure that the physics educational content was approachable for kids and that they could do those kind of things at home. And then now, since they've enjoyed that so much and it's gotten STEAM accreditation, then we're starting to talk about, okay, like future products, what other concepts would you like to teach, or what would you like to see in the Marble Rush new product or new types of interactions, and how we might be able to develop those.
Thank you. Romesa asks if there are any types of learning skills LeapFrog prioritizes, and also how do you balance different learning goals?
So different types of learning skills. Well, our bread and butter and what we started with was teaching kids how to read. And that's what our founder, Mike Wood, why he developed LeapFrog, was teaching kids how to read because his own child was struggling with that. We do tend to stick around kind of like we have, or at least historically, we've been around kind of that core curriculum of language arts, math, and doing those are kind of the primary, but then also things like very kind of preschool skills, readiness skills. So we do things with that, whether it's social behaviors, or teaching things that they might declarative knowledge, things like colors and how color mixing and building those kind of concepts as well. How do we balance those different learning goals? It can be tricky. Sometimes there are product concepts that come out and that we're asked to work on, and not all of the concepts that we work on actually make it to shelf. So sometimes we'll be pretty far in that development cycle. We may be, just before doing usability testing where we've worked on something. And you might have a concept and a kind of a physical structure for something, a toy, maybe a truck or something that you want to teach certain things with, but maybe the physical nature of it just doesn't work with that, or it's maybe not got the right price point for it, so you can't afford the chip that you want to be able to put in it to design these kind of interactions. So it's a lot of give and take. We have our goals as a learning team, and we kind of try to communicate those goals and why they are important, why certain learning pathways are very important, and trying to make sure that we can integrate those into the design of it. And sometimes it just doesn't work. And so we kind of have to table that for a bit, and it might resurface a little bit later on.
Joe asks, how many levels of testing does each toy go through before it gets the final approval?
That depends too, depending on internal testing. I mean, I have one product that I'm on build 27 of that. So, our alpha is 1. And so sometimes there's these, again, the density of the product, how much is in it can create that. Sometimes you're just fixing one thing at a time. Other times you're rewriting everything or editing everything in a new build. So yeah, it really varies on the type of product. But everything does go through some level of a lot of internal testing and then some level of kid testing as well.
Joe also wants to know, what do you love about your job?
What do I love about my job? There's a lot of things I love about my job. I like that, from the day-to-day aspect, the people I work with are really great. There's a great work-life balance at LeapFrog. We aren't crunching like some places I hear that I know game studios, a lot of it, they have to go through a lot of crunch time when they're working things out. So there are times where things are busier and where there's kind of ebbs and flow of it. I love that about the job. I love that, my manager, Clement Chow, who's the former president of the Bay Area chapter of Children's Media Association, that he has, I think it was last year or the year before, he was promoted to vice president of learning, which was a new position that they created. So they're elevating the importance of learning within the company. So I think that that's really, I love that we're valued at our job as well. But I also like that, there are opportunities like the concepting that we get to weigh in on, being able to just kind of see something that's inspiring out in the world. Like you're like, oh, I saw these kids just they were so engaged with, whatever this thing is. And there's a few of these that have come out that it's I saw kids that were really engaged with spinning lights that were going around a ring and trying to stop it. I think you've seen the ticket game at a lot of kids carnivals or at Chuck E. Cheese, where the lights that go around and they want to stop it on the light and get 100 tickets. Well, then we took that idea and then tried to develop a concept around that. And now we have a letter go round, letter thing that does that with lights, and then the kids stop it on a letter. And so then they learn about that letter. And so there's goals within it. So we take that kind of really fun aspect of it, try to create a new concept out of it. And I just love being able to come up with a lot of those concepts, even though 95% of them never like make it beyond the concepting stage. It's just fun to be able to kind of think about those things and wonder what if, and can we make this into a product, and wouldn't that be cool?
Yeah. We have a couple more questions about testing. Desiree has a really interesting question about when you're observing children at play, testing the product, what kind of things are you looking for?
Oh, I mean, it depends. A lot of times we go in with specific questions. Sometimes it's simple things. Well, not simple, but like we might take something like this. This is a rocket twist toy. And what we might look at is, how are kids holding it? What is their natural, if they just go up and pick it up from the table, what is their natural way that they're going to be holding it? And for our age range, we want this for 3 to 5 year olds. Like, so we test all different ranges of that. So sometimes it's something physical like that. Also, like with this toaster, it was, this is for, I think, 18 months plus. And so we were trying to see, can the kids put that back into the toaster? Like, are they able to physically do that? Do they have the pincer grip that's necessary, the tension needed for that, and to get it to pop up? Those sorts of things are really, we test out. We also, another product, I just got them all around the place here, is like, so this is this vacuum, it's pick up and count vacuum. And one of the things that we did prior to even coming up with the design of this was testing other toy vacuums out there, and what did kids like to do with them? What do they want to do with the vacuum, and what were the expectations for it? And we learned that kids really want to be able to see it pick things up. There are some vacuums that we tested that just make noise, and kids would run it over things, and they'd be like, it's not picking it up. It's not, what is going on here? So we were able to work with our industrial design team to create this vacuum that's got this little tray thing underneath here, and it's got a little conveyor belt there. And what it does is it rolls over these little pucks, and it picks them up and puts them into there, and then spits it out the back. And so what's cool about these little pucks is it's not only can create counting games with it, but there's also, it has color recognition in it. So then what we're testing with that is, we're testing to see, are kids playing these games? Are they listening to the instructions that are coming from the toy itself and to play those games? And then what other supports can we provide to them while they're playing that game? So sometimes the game is complete the rainbow, get one of the every color here. So then we light these up once they've collected one of them, so that way they can kind of keep track of which ones that they've gotten. And so it's all kind of testing those kind of things to see, how are kids responding to the prompts? Are they finding those games, or are they just having fun picking things up, which is great too. Because I love that a lot of our toys and a lot of our products really try to pride in ourselves on making them work and be fun without batteries, because we know not every parent wants to hear the toys, the sound effects all the time. So being able to have a non-electronic experience with an electronic toy, I think is really great too. And it shows to the tried and true play patterns when people are able to, or when kids are able to play with it in that way. That doesn't necessarily require all of that.
Okay, cool. I love that bit about the batteries, because that's so true. It's interesting to hear that learning scientists are also thinking about that. Rumesa is curious about, how do you imagine your child and caregiver and school audience and usability research? Is it mostly an imagined general audience? And whom are you able to recruit?
Yeah, I think when we're thinking of products from the concepting stage, we are kind of have an imaginary audience in mind, though a lot of people I work with, they have children. I don't have children, but I do have family members with children, and I'm around kids a lot of friends and family with them. So I sometimes will imagine somebody, oh, we're designing this for a 3-year-old. Okay, I'm thinking about, one of my friend's child, and thinking how they might interact with that. The people that we're able to recruit are largely from the Bay Area, but so I think there's about 9 different counties around the Bay Area that we do recruit from. But although we are well aware that does not create the most diverse sample, right? Demographically, social economic status, it does have, we have quite a lot of diversity in race, which is great, but that we are aware of that. So we do have to kind of caveat some of those things that we see when in that. We also try to we are trying to think more about accessibility as well. So kids that are, have different cognitive abilities, physical abilities. Like I said, my background comes from working in the children's hospital. So that's always something that I'm aware of and thinking of as well. And I'm really inspired by some of the designs that use the simplest interactions, simplest just button clicking and things like that to create really great experiences as well. So we're trying to wrap all those kind of things up together and in our testing and thinking about all those facets at once.
This is going to be our last question for the night. Elizabeth asks, what products of yours have been most popular or successful for both engagement and learning?
The ones I hear the most about, I hear a lot about this vacuum. We won a few awards that were really great. So that was really nice to, it's not, I don't make the products for the awards, but it's really great to hear that. But also from all my friends that, this was one of the earlier products I made earlier on in my second year, I think, at LeapFrog. So I was buying it for presents for everybody when they came out. Because one of the cool things too is on every LeapFrog box on the back of it, I'll find it here, the vacuum. Yeah, I'm still excited. I keep the boxes and things of these. But what's really cool too is on the bottom here, I'm just going to try to get the glare. It has our name on it and an expert learning quote. So it we give our 2 cents on why we think it's a great product. And so I got to put that on there. And so sending that out to all my friends was really great.
That's awesome.
So that was a really fun toy that I got to make. But the Microscope here has been really great as well. It's just being released in the US this fall, but it's won, I think, Toy of the Year in Belgium and in a couple other European countries that are escaping me right now. But that is also really cool to see. And it's great to have it's still a toy technically, but it's a higher end toy and a real, that has that real life experience that you can have with it too. So that's really cool. And I think there was a little bit I'm seeing on this question here. Oh, and do most of my close colleagues have degrees in higher education? Yes, we have a team of, like I said, learning scientists who are learning designers and curriculum designers. And all of us on their team either have doctoral degrees or master's degrees. So we are well educated, but a lot of us also have practical experience in real world situations too. So we have a couple teachers, former teachers on our team. I was a former child life specialist, so healthcare education and coping education. We have a lot of that great experience in working in research labs as well with real people. So we have a pretty good diversity, but yeah, a lot of educational kind of nerds in the background as well, but nerds who are nerds because we love to play games and we love teaching other people. So it's good to be a nerd.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Ben.
Oh, thank you.
You're an amazing guest. You've definitely ignited our curiosity, like your motto. Thank you so much.
Thanks everybody for all the amazing questions. I really appreciate people just throwing those out there, and it was really wonderful. Kennedy, thank you for being such a great host, and Karen, both for asking me to be on this. It was a delight.
Yeah, great. It was great, Ben. Thank you.
If anybody has other questions for me, want to reach out, I have my LinkedIn, it's /Ben J Mill. That's my Twitter. That's also my website. If you want to find me and connect and ask more questions there, please do. Happy to chat with anybody.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you everybody for attending. Once again, you can meet up with members through our Facebook page or the member directory. Thank you all for being members. Class is dismissed.
Thanks all. Bye.
Thanks, Ben.